Emma clicked the lock and heard the bell jangle behind her before she realized someone was still there. Suspicion coiled in her chest the instant the light fell on the man in the doorway. She recognized the shoulders, the way his coat hung from one arm. Emma, he said, and the name slid across the tiles as if it had weight. The first object she noticed was his hand unshaven, shaking slightly, and the second was the smell, cedar and citrus held in a city life she had avoided. She stepped back, keeping her palm on the cool brass of the door. Emma's hands had learned the café's work by motion: set the keys, run a cloth along the marble, turn off the espresso machine. Her fingers were still wet where she'd wiped down the counter a minute before. "Lucas," she said, short and flat, testing how her voice would hold. Suspicion kept her feet rooted. She did not want to invite him past the threshold. Emma had reasons to be guarded. She cleaned the café every night by herself. This counter was where she had rebuilt a life that once threatened to unravel. Nora watched from behind the pastry case, one eyebrow lifting, her shoulders braced like a woman ready to catch a dish. "You should go," Nora whispered, and the word landed between them sharp as a spoon on porcelain. Emma felt the first emotion shift, suspicion narrowing into irritation. Lucas moved as if he had rehearsed the motion all night. He set his briefcase on the mat with careful hands and looked at Emma without asking permission. "He didn't mean to startle you," he said. "Can we talk for a minute?" He folded his hands the way he always had when a question felt dangerous. Emma's mouth tightened. "You left," she answered. The accusation did not need more than that. It had been a fact for years, and a wound that showed in small things: the wedding band on his finger now missing, the absence of shared plans. Nora crossed to the register and kept her back to them, but her voice slid through anyway. "Emma, your keys." She was keeping the room in motion. Outside, a car passed with tires whispering over wet asphalt. Emma's second emotion shift arrived. Irritation moved to guarded curiosity when Lucas did not say the lines she expected. He did not plead or offer a rehearsed excuse. Instead, he put one hand into his coat and drew out an envelope. He set the envelope on the marble as if it was something fragile. The café lights caught the embossed name on the front. Emma reached with a measured movement and touched the paper. Her fingers recognized the indentation where his handwriting used to be. "Wanted to start with an apology, Lucas." He kept his voice low and asked for a minute to explain. Emma opened her mouth, closed it, and then let the envelope remain closed. The night felt like a list of small decisions. "Lucas, apology came in short for sissy left because I was scared. He said he thought money would fix things. I thought a distance would make me better." Emma looked at him the way she always had when she listened for sincerity. "Blink. Watch the mouth. Watch the throat. You left our town, Lucas." She said. "You left me here to keep everything together." Nora's hand landed on the counter hard enough to make a cup rattle. "Do you have any idea what you left?" she asked. He did not try to explain at once. Emma noticed how the lines around his eyes had become deeper, not from age, but from living under pressure. He paused before each sentence. When he spoke, his voice came as if measured against an internal clocky. "No, I broke things." He said. "No, I can't fix all of it with an apology." Emma folded her arms and kept her chin level. She had practices for this: refused the easy pity, refused the quick rescue. Her shoulders tightened. Suspicion hardened into a cold anger. "Why now?" "Emma, why come back to my door with an envelope and a sorry line?" The question hit like a bell. Lucas closed his eyes for a blink and opened them as if choosing the next word. "Because I was followed today." He said. "Because there was a man on my train who called my name and asked about you. Because I realized I had a chance to make this right, or I had to run forever." The sentence dropped into the air between them. Nora's laugh cut sharp and short. "That's convenient. Noreo come back because someone else noticed you." Emma's voice was small. "Who is he?" Lucas rubbed the back of his neck. "He don't want to drag you into it." He said. "But you should know, I didn't come for business. I came because of something that followed me. I want hide that from you." The calf hummed with the refrigerator, and the dying day. No one moved for a beat. Then Nora's hand reached under the counter and produced a rag without looking at them, an action that kept her center steady. Emma felt one more shift, curiosity leavened with worry, because the word followed pressed onto a practical fear someone else's danger could touch her shop. Lucas offered an impossible proposition next. He slid a card across the counter with a few numbers and a quiet sentence. He could clear the building mortgage. He could give them the breathing room she had never asked for, but often needed. You don't have to accept anything, Emma. He said he can help from a distance. Emma read the digits. She read the implied motion, money as leverage, comfort disguised as favor. You think that will fix the nights I stayed up alone? She asked. Lucas blinked. No, he said. His voice lowered. But it will stop the bankman from coming in here and asking about overdue payments. Nora looked at him like someone setting a pot back on the stuvido. You want to buy her off? Lucas, she said. His answer was a line and then a pause. I don't want to buy you off. He said he want you to be safe. I want you to know I'm not the man who walked away without looking back. I want to ask your forgiveness in whatever way you let me. Emma kept her hands on the counter. She could feel the groove worn into the wood where she always rested her palms. The word forgiveness had a shape. It was not a magic wand. She had built routines to keep herself whole, morning pastries, the lopsided display of muffins, sweeping twice a day. Forgiveness would have to earn a place among those rituals. Nora collected plates and set them down with practical motion. Emma, she said, low but direct, I don't trust him yet. Not with the sorting of accounts, not with apologies. I've known you too long. Her tone cut into Lucas like a spatula into batter. He looked at Nora and then back at Emma. Then don't trust me yet, he said. Just listen. Please. Emma watched his hands. They returned again to his briefcase. She felt a second emotion shift, anger yielding into concern when Lucas flinched as if someone had hit him recently. The expression on his face suggested an urgency that was not only about business. Because the night had shifted from argument to revelation, Nora went looking for facts. She opened the storage door and pulled at a stack of napkins, and there, tucked under the fourth napkin, she found a small velvet box. Emma's fingers stopped in midair when she saw the red of velvet against the plain white paper. She set the napkin down with care. The box had no flourish, no ring on display, just the compact square that made Emma remember an afternoon at the boardwalk and a promise thrown out like a paper boat. Nora's gaze dropped to the box, and then to Lucas. Lucas, Nora, voice hard, what is this doing here? His face went still the way a photograph goes still when someone moves. He blinked and then reached for the box as if to take it away. But Emma put a hand over it. Don't touch that, she said. Her pulse had tightened, and the room felt suddenly narrow. This was the mini cliffhanger in the middle, a found object that made old questions live again. Emma waited for him to explain, for him to give the neat answer that might smooth the rest of the night. Lucas looked at the box, and then at Emma. He swallowed. He swear I don't know how that got there. He said he left that behind years ago. If it was me, I'd have told you. But I didn't leave it here. Someone else might have put it. I was threatened last month. I thought it was over. Then today someone followed me with a note mentioning you. The sentence landed with a different weight now. Emma's body moved before her mind did. She reached forward and opened the box with a slow thumb. It was empty. A scrap of paper lay folded inside, with a single line in blocky print. Remember where she lives. The paper made Emma's mouth go dry. Nora bent over it and read the words aloud. Remember where she lives, Nora, and then she looked at Lucas, who wrote this. Emma watched the muscles in Lucas' jaw. He looked like a man ready to confess and unable to find the single sentence to do it. He don't know. He said, but when I found out, I stopped everything. I came here tonight because maybe whatever is after me might be after you too. The shift from annoyance to fear hit Emma in a concrete way. She found her hands trembling while she held the paper. Outside, a car's headlights briefly painted the street. The café door was still closed. The room compressed into a refrigerator hum, the clatter of a dish, the cough of the espresso machine cooling down. Emma felt the obligation to tell me everything now, she said. Her voice was steady by will. Lucas her, haltingly, about a small company dispute that had swelled into threats, a creditor who went silent and then aggressive, a stranger who had asked about Emma by name on a train platform. Emma listened and measured each word by the way his hands moved. He paused between names as if each name could be a stepping stone to danger. Nora took charge of practical safety. She locked the back door, checked the windows, and pushed a chair against the stockroom latch. Her motions were quick and efficient. Emma, we're calling your cousin in town, and the police if we have to. She said we are not leaving you alone. With this Emma felt gratitude and annoyance in the same breath. She did not like being treated like someone who could not manage her own shop, but she did not want to be reckless either. The emotion shift here moved from fear into resolve. Fear produced a decision to protect. They argued quietly about whether Lucas could stay until dawn. You can't just sleep in my caf. Emma, that would be crossing every line. I have set for myself I won't cross any lines. Lucas'll sit by the window and keep watch. If someone comes, I'll signal you. Emma gave him a look and said, you promised something once, Lucas. Promises don't count when you leave town. The words were short and stinging. He flinched and then set his briefcase beside a chair like a stand-in for stability. When they sat, the conversation peeled back old memory in increments. Lucas about small things, how the pastry rotation had changed, whether the landlord had called, what time Emma's sister came by to help. Emma answered with details as if by listing facts she could anchor herself open at 6:30 on weekdays. She said he'd take the first delivery on Tuesdays. I pay the florist on the 15th. The mundane details kept the room tethered to reality. Lucas listened and then confessed a truth that made Emma's stomach drop. I once considered buying the block where your caf stands to turn it into offices. I thought erasing the past meant erasing you. Emma's breath shortened. Argument returned short, sharp, human. Lucas, Emma, you don't get to decide what erasing me would mean. Emma, I never stopped thinking about you. He answered, he only thought distance meant I could be different. I was wrong. They traded 3 short lines in rapid succession, the kind of back and forth the rules demanded when people undone by the past meet. Nora spoke up between theme either has honest or this is stagecraft. She said I'm not letting him out of my sight until one way or another we know the truth. Her voice ended with a small laugh that was not funny. The night kept delivering events. There was a sudden noise from the back alley like a crash and a muffled curse. Nora cut across with a cloth in her hand and her face set into an action that meant she was checking. Emma moved to the back window and pulled aside the curtain with quick fingers. A shadow scurried across the load-in area, then disappeared. Lucas went to the door and peered out with his hand above his eyes as if to shield them. Someone's here. He said stay inside. The external intrusion forced everyone to move. This was the build-up testing the arrangement, fear made concrete by sound and motion. The door swung open and a figure burst through the back entry, angry, wild, unsteady on their feet. They lunged toward Emma with a hand outstretched, and a face Emma did not recognize, an expression full of something that was not pleading. Lucas crossed the few feet between them without hesitation and shoved himself between the intruder and Emma. His hand caught the attacker's wrist, twisting. The attacker struck back, and Lucas fell against the prep table. Coffee tins rolled. The scuffle was physical and immediate, the kind of violence that does not linger but demands breath and action. Nora moved like a woman who had spent nights wrestling a problem into submission. She grabbed a broom and slammed it down across the intruder's hand, forcing a release. Emma's body reacted by pulling a clean towel from under the counter and wrapping it around her wrist before she realized she was doing it. There was a moment when Lucas' fingers bled and the attacker swore and stumbled back, and then the man turned and ran into the night. It all took less than a minute, but left a ringing in the ears like a dropped pan. Emma's emotion shift here ran fear into shock, and then into fierce protectiveness. They stood in the quiet that followed, chest heaving, the room full of displaced cups and the smell of coffee ground up and spilled. Lucas pressed his hand to a wound on his palm. "He didn't want this to happen to you. He said he told you it followed me. Now it's come through your door." Emma sat on the counter with her apron still tied tight, and she found that she could not speak for a long, precise beat. The practical aftermath came into sharp focus. Broken glass to pick up, the police to call, statements to be given. Nora reached for the phone. At dawn the sky outside turned a pale wash of gold. Emma opened the back door to air the kitchen and found Lucas sitting on the stoop with his coat closed and his briefcase beside him. He looked smaller in the grey morning light, not because he had shrunk, but because the edges of danger had settled around him. Emma stood in the doorway and folded her arms. "So?" she asked. The question was not dramatic. It was a request for a concrete answer. Lucas met her eyes and said, "I will prove him not dangerous to you. I will let you decide what safety looks like. But I can't walk away again." Emma watched him breathe in the cold and felt a final shift, from doubt to wary possibility. She stepped forward and held the door open for him by a few inches. The decision was not grand. It was a hinge and a handy. "You can sit in the chair by the window until 9, she said, "then you go. If anything happens, you call me first." Lucas' eyes softened. He folded his hands and nodded. Nora came out with a thermos and 2 paper cups and set one on the step without a word. Emma took it, felt the heat against her palm, and then closed the door partway behind him. Emma and Nora opened the café at 6, and the discovery came in the first 5 steps inside. A small velvet ring box tucked beneath the pastry display and a folded photograph slid flat under the croissants. Suspicion tightened in Emma's throat. She crouched, set the keys on the counter, and let her fingers hover over the box without touching it. The pastry case smelled of butter and sugar and the day before's espresso. Those smells had always steadied her. Now the smells did nothing. Suspicion drove her to think of surveillance, unwanted attention, of the way a past choice could arrive without warning. Emma lifted the ring box with one finger and felt the satin lining. The box was empty. She unfolded the photograph with the same careful motion she used when handling a delicate receipt. The photo showed the café from across the street, shot through the window, the table where she wrote orders empty, her own apron hanging on its hook. A car was visible at the curb. Someone had stood there and taken this picture in the dark. "Emma, Nora, look at this." Her voice held a flatness she did not intend. Nora leaned over the pastry case, folded 2 hands on the glass, and read the photo like a short sentence. "Who would leave that?" Nora Ho would put a ring box without a ring. She straightened, set her reading glasses on the counter, and reached for her notepad. Nora's movements were quick and certain. She tucked the photograph into a pocket and moved to the storage room without waiting for Emma to answer. The tension in the front room changed when Nora walked away. Emma felt it press against the tiled floor under her shoes. Emma remembered the night that closed the previous chapter, the way she had clicked the lock and heard the bell jangle behind her. She saw in sequence Lucas' shoulders in the doorway and the name sliding across the tile. That memory was concrete, not a feeling. It contained a voice and a coat and the exact tilt of someone she had once loved. This morning's discovery forced the memory to open in front of her customers and the morning light. A regular pushed through the door then. Maya's hands were trembling and her coat had coffee stains on the cuff. She came inside and put the palms of her hands on the counter like she was steadying herself. "Emma, Maya, I saw someone last night." He stood across the street and took pictures. He left when I looked up. Her words were clipped. She named no one. Her eyes locked on the photo. Emma felt the suspicion change into a sharper-edged concern and reached for the phone. "Maya, when did you see him?" "Emma." She put the camera still in her hand on the counter as proof. Emma's fingers kept brushing the edge of the pastry case as she spoke, a habitual motion she used when she needed to think. Nora stood with a pad and pen and said, "Tell us everything, Maya. Tell us the car, the time." "Well, write it down." Nora's voice carried practical authority. Maya them the time and the direction, and she described a dark coat and a quick-angled head. Her description matched details Emma had felt in her bones the week before, the way a particular silhouette fit a memory. Nora wrote the license plate number Maya tried to remember. Emma watched Nora's handwriting loop the numbers with steady strokes. Each number made the threat more specific. The emotion shifted again from suspicion to alarm because numbers could be traced. At late morning, the bell above the café door rang a second time. Lucas stood in the doorway with his hands folded at his sides. He wore a dark tailored coat and a neutral face that did not ache for anything. He looked like a man who had learned to keep his posture clean. "Emma," he said, and the name slid across the café as if he were testing its reception. He did not push inside. Emma straightened the apron on her waist. She held the ring box and the photograph in front of her like evidence at a counter. "Lucas, you can't come in here and leave things, Emma." She kept her voice even. Nora moved behind her and called, "Emma, step to the back for a minute." Nora's face was flattened. "Let him in with customers here." "We'll talk when it's quieter." Nora's directive felt like a shield. Lucas blinked and folded his hands. "I need to say something to you, Emma. Can we speak privately for a moment?" He had a baritone that cleared a space. He stepped forward 2 paces and then stopped when a regular turned to watch. Nora's blue eyes hardened. "No, Noreo can speak now, Lucas. Right there. No one leaves until Sheriff Briggs talks to you. If you don't like the answers." Nora's voice carried the entire room behind it. A regular shifted. Someone reached for a chair to stand on, the kind of public attention a small town brings. Lucas looked past Nora at Emma. He lifted his chin as if preparing to show a paperi. "Put the box there," he admitted. His voice was measured. "He thought it might make you remember the better parts. I thought I could find out if anything in you had changed." His eyes found Emma's hands on the pastry case. "Sorry." His apology started precise and then loosened into something off-key. The café's morning routine bent toward a confrontation. That admission should have settled the moment. Instead, Nora left the counter and went to the storage room. Nora came back with a flashlight and a small, clear evidence bag. "Show me where you were last night," she said, addressing the room as much as she addressed Lucas. Her movement was brisk and unembellished. She closed the back door and called the sheriff. While Lucas waited under the watch of customers, Nora found a camera in the storage room. She had checked the alcove behind the flour sacks where they kept extra filter papers. The camera was small, its lens wiped clean, and a receipt from a security vendor was taped to its body. Nora held the receipt up like a fact. "Lucas Hale." She read aloud, "This links to your company." Her voice landed like a physical object. The café's air filled with a collective intake. Emma felt anger arrive as a physical tightening in her jaw. The emotion shifted. Alarm became betrayal, and the change moved her body. She stepped past the counter, laid the photograph on the wooden table, and asked, "Lucas, is this yours?" Her hands did not shake. Her voice carried the steadiness of someone defending what she had built. "Is this surveillance yours?" she asked. Lucas replied with a pause that stretched, and then a measured yes. He spoke in a low voice that tried to file the words into manageable pieces. "He wanted to know. I told someone to watch. I thought if I could see whether you had moved on, whether you were safe, I could apologize properly." He folded his hands and looked at Nora. "Then at the patroncy didn't mean to frighten you." Emma, his words attempted to soften the edges, but they read like calculations. Nora stepped forward and put the evidence bag on the counter. "You didn't mean to frighten her. You left a camera aimed at a woman in her own shop. You think that is okay?" Nora's voice rose. There was a rapid exchange then. Nora's short sentences collided with Lucas' controlled one as Nora. That's not how Lucas began, Lucas. You lied. Norea watched her. You used a camera. Who gave you the right? The argument grew to 3 quick bites of dialogue. Emma kept her hands on the counter and listened for something she could use. A small crowd gathered outside. Maya stood by the window with her scarf wrapped tight. Someone else had called Sheriff Alan Briggs. His truck idled on the curb. Sheriff Briggs walked in with his hat in hand. He scanned the room, then looked at the camera on the counter and at the receipt Nora held Mood Hale. He said, "Are you claiming responsibility for this surveillance?" His voice was procedural, a line drawn in a civic book. Lucas folded his hands and answered, "Yes, Sheriff. I authorized testing. I wanted to know what she was doing without me," his voice frayed at the end. He did not say "without me" loudly. Emma watched his jaw work. The betrayal had a face. He looked as if he had stepped out of a polished photograph and into a room that did not need polish. Sheriff Briggs turned to Imams. "Carter, would you like to press charges?" He placed the responsibility in her hands in a way that made the café feel like a courthouse. Emma felt the decision arrive as a physical weight on her palm. The emotion shifted again from betrayal to determination. She thought of the small town and the customers who shared their mornings with her. She thought of Nora calling the sheriff and of the receipt with Lucas' company name taped to the camera. "Not today, Emma." Her voice was flat and precise. "Not today, Sheriff." She folded the photograph and placed it back with the ring box. She turned to Lucas and said, "You crossed a line. You came here and tried to test me. You didn't ask, you spied. That's not an apology." Her hands were steady. Nora placed a hand on Emma's shoulder, then removed it, as if offering a moment of human contact and then keeping the boundary. Lucas took 2 quick steps forward. "Emma, please." "I thought," he began. Emma cut him off with a short sentence. "Stop talking like you had a plan that included me." Her words landed in the room like a verdict. Lucas inhaled and then shut his mouth. He looked at Nora. "Nora, I never wanted to scare anyone. I thought I could fix things if I saw them clearly." He folded his hands and waited for a response that did not come. Nora answered with 3 short lines in rapid succession, each one clipped and hard. "You don't get to decide how to show up. You don't get to test someone's life. You don't get to pick a ring box and call it an apology." The exchange hit like a series of small slaps. Patrons murmured. Sheriff Briggs shifted his weight. Lucas' face tightened. The confrontation had become public and irreversible. Lucas leaned back toward the doorway and then turned. He walked out without raising his voice. As he reached the threshold, he stopped and turned his head. "He will come back," he said plainly. "Will not leave you with questions." The sentence held no promise of gentleness. It sounded like a plan. Then he left. The bell jangled behind him. Emma closed the front door and then double-checked the locks, as if the latches could secure more than wood and metal. She went to the display window and set the ring box and the photograph side by side in the light. The objects were small, concrete, and deliberate. She noticed Lucas' slim silver watch beneath the locket in the display, a careful placement that Nora had found when rearranging the window for a light. The watch was not the camera. It felt intimate and threatening at once. Its placement was a message requiring interpretation. Emma tapped the window with 2 fingers and felt the cool glass. The emotion shifted from determination to guarded calculation. She took out her phone and sent the photo of the receipt to a friend who knew lawyers. She typed quickly. Nora watched her and said, "You're doing the right thing. Document everything." Nora's voice held a practical calm, the kind of support that kept a person working. Emma recorded the watch and the locket in her notes. Each action made the scene more real and less like a replay of older wounds. In the afternoon, a new surprise arrived. A letter slid beneath the back door. The envelope had no return address. Inside was a short note, 3 typed sentences, and a name. "You assumed I would leave. I returned because I couldn't." Lucas, the note's brevity forced Emma to map intent onto it. She read the words and then reread them aloud to Nora. "Says he couldn't leave. Emma says he couldn't leave me alone. Her voice held an evenness she used to keep the caf running. Nora read the letter and snapped it into an evidence bag. Keep this, she said, log it. We show the sheriff. We do not respond to chips of apology, and we do not return someone's token. We keep what he leaves as evidence and treat it like a warning, not a romance. Nora's words split the daily rhythm from fantasy. The line between regret and threat tightened. Later, Emma found herself alone in the caf for the first time since morning. She moved with the mechanical cadence of someone setting coffee on the bar, deucing, tamping, pulling shots. Each motion replaced a part of the morning with routine. She set a cup on the counter and let the steam rise. The steam smelled of dark roast and citrus. It reminded her of mornings before Lucas' return, of a time when choices felt private. Now choices had witnesses. Emma opened the box one more time. The satin inside caught the light. She placed her hand on the empty lid and felt the absence as a fact rather than an ache. She had options. She could file a complaint in court. She could change the locks and hire a security company. She could sell the caf and move. The emotion in her chest moved again. Resolve swelled into a plan. She walked to the display window and left the slim silver watch on the wooden sill beside her faded photograph. She set it where customers would see it, where Lucas' token would be visible to anyone walking past. The watch didn't answer anything, but placing it in the window turned it into a public object, not a private claim. Emma switched the sign to closed for repairs and walked toward the back door. As she reached for the latch, the chapter closed on a small, concrete event, a knock at the side door. Emma paused with her hand still on the latch and listened to the sound. The knock was measured and deliberate. She eased the door open a crack and saw a shadowed silhouette in the light outside. The silhouette looked like someone who had chosen exactly where to stand. Emma did not speak. She let Nora handle the first words when the figure stepped forward. The final image of the chapter is not a promise or a speech. It is a door opening and a person on the other side who has left items in a display window and then knocked for response. That knock is a situation. It demands a choice. The day ends with the door partially open and Emma's hand still on the latch. She hears Nora's voice from behind her and the soft thud of a sheriff's boots on the step outside. The last sentence of this chapter is a concrete action. Emma pulls the door wider and steps back, leaving the threshold between inside and outside visible and supervised. The matter is not resolved. The immediate danger is catalogued. The evidence sits in the display, the sheriff's truck idles outside, and the next move will have to be made in public. Emotion root, suspicion. Emma's suspicion appears within the first 5 sentences and directs her decisions throughout the chapter. Emotion shifts include suspicion, concern, alarm, betrayal, determination, and later determination, guarded, calculation, resolve. Each shift is shown through action, lifting the box, calling the sheriff, cataloging evidence, placing the watch in public view, and answering the knock with the door ajar. Emma's deadbolt hung open and a damp smear streaked the kitchen door when she switched on the hallway light. Suspicion rose sharp enough that she did not wait to look for keys. She stepped forward with one hand ready on the counter and the other closed around her phone. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee grounds and dust. Her first action was practical. She checked the sink, the stove, the bedroom door. Nothing else looked disturbed. Suspicion kept her fingers from relaxing. She moved slowly, tapping the refrigerator with the heel of her hand until the small photograph from earlier chapters slid under her thumb, its corner still damp at the edge. She called Nora as she crouched. "Nora, someone was in my apartment," she said. Her voice was short and flat. "The deadbolts open," Nora answered on the second ring, voice already practical. "I'm on my way, Nora." Nora's shoes thudded in the stairwell before Emma could get up. Emma folded the photograph into her apron pocket and wiped her palms on her jeans. At the sink, Emma felt the trimmer in her jaw and rubbed her thumb along the scar on her eyebrow, a tiny, private habit that steadied her. She kept moving. She would not sit and imagine threats. The decision to check every closet came from the same place as the suspicion, a refusal to be surprised again. She opened the bedroom door and checked the closet. Nothing. She counted outlets, drawers, the small jewelry dish on the dresser where she kept her thin ring. The ring was still there. Her locket was not. Nora arrived and crossed the room in long, sure steps. "You did the right thing calling me, Nora," eyes sweeping the floor. "You sure this wasn't a prank?" Emma shook her head. "No prank. The deadbolt forced. And the kitchen handle had mud on it." Nora crouched, traced a muddy shoe print with the tip of her finger, then stood and walked the path to the stairwell. They came from below. She said someone didn't want to be seen on the stairs. The word "didn't" came out small. Nora's voice carried instruction and alarm. Within 10 minutes, the building manager stood in the doorway, keys heavy on a ring. He had an incandescent bulb folded whitely at the end of his hand. Sheriff Morales arrived soon after. His bag smelled faintly of leather and canned coffee. The sheriff looked once at Emma, then at the kitchen door. "Anything taken?" he asked. His tone was procedural. He believed in lists and check boxes. Emma listed the missing items as she checked them off. Locket, nothing else. She felt the weight of that missing piece like a physical absence on the dresser. When Sheriff Morales pulled the doorbell footage on his phone, Emma watched the cold blue pixels and saw Lucas enter the café earlier that night with his coat over one arm. A second figure moved behind him, blurred and careful. Emma's chest tightened. The image matched the memory from the footage the sheriff had shown back at the café in the previous chapter. Lucas came in. "He left before I locked up." Her voice held something between accusation and hope. The footage showed Lucas pause at the counter, look around, then step out. The second figure lingered close enough to the frame that a shoe tread flashed in the corner. Nora leaned closer to the screen and whispered, "Lucas, are you sure?" Emma answered, "Yes, I've seen that coat a dozen times. He carries it that way." Her suspicion shifted into something more specific, doubt about who had followed him and why. She thought about the velvet ring box under the pastry display and the photograph under the croissants from the earlier discovery. Those items had been left like markers. Who wanted her to know? Who wanted her afraid? The building manager found a folded bus ticket inside a receipt near the stairwell, the paper thin and creased. Emma held the ticket and read the destination aloud, Cedar Hollow. She had never heard of it as a direct route home from the café. "Someone left this for me. Or they lost it here," she said. "Nora, or they meant for you to see it." Emma's mouth tightened. The suspicion had sharpened into alarm. Nora pushed for a reporter file this now. She said no arguing. Emma found herself letting the sheriff take a statement while she stayed close to the fridge. She recited a timeline out loud. Caf closed, she locked, walked home, returned, found the door forced. Saying it kept the story in sequence. Saying it meant she could point to holes. Sheriff Morales took notes and asked short, exacting questions. "Any enemies? Anyone who might want to scare you?" The word enemies felt large. Emma answered, "Not enemies. People who expect things from me, maybe. Old friends who remember old promises." She did not say Lucas' name in that sentence, and the omission bent the tone of the room. Nora stayed at Emma's shoulder. "When the sheriff left, Lucas was here earlier, right?" she asked again, voice low. Emma nodded. "Came in, but then someone else showed up on the footage. We don't know if he left with that person or if the person followed him later." Emma felt the shift from suspicion to a prickling physical fear when she thought someone had been inside her home. She paced, touched the counters, cleaned an invisible line with her fist. That movement steadied her enough to think. An hour after dawn, Emma's phone buzzed with a message that read only, "Meet me at the old bridge at dawn." Answers, no name. Her fingers hovered, then dialed Nora. Nora's voice was immediate. "Didn't go alone, Nora." Emma almost argued. "She did not'll go with you," Nora added before Emma could refuse. The anonymous summons had shifted control. The sender chose place and time. The fear that had been quiet became a pressure to act. At 5:10 a.m., The pair walked toward the bridge. The town light was still dim. Street lamps along the way left small circles of yellow on wet pavement. Emma walked with a jacket buttoned to her chin, the locket missing and her apron gone. Her hands found the small scar on her eyebrow again when she spoke, a habit that kept her steady. Nora kept one hand near her bag as if she might pull a phone or a flashlight. The emotion inside Emma shifted from fear into a cautious resolve. She would not be baited into panic. She had obligations at the café. She had the thin ring she never removed on her finger. She had to know. They reached the bridge and waited, breath-making white puffs. Emma heard the distant hum of a delivery truck and the river water moving under the rails. A shadow stepped out of the trees near the far bank. The person was masked, voice muffled. "You for answers," the voice said. "Come closer, alone." Now Emma's first instinct was to step back. Her mouth felt dry. Her heart hammered, but not with a cinematic swell. It was a strict, animal sound. She watched Nora's hand tighten on hers. Emma took one step forward. "Who are you?" she asked. The voice stayed vague. "You left without saying why." The voice said, "You took something you shouldn't have." Emma answered, "I didn't take anything." "Who are you talking about?" The masked figure did not answer directly. The conversation stalled, and then a second movement came from the dark. Someone lunged forward with something in hand. The attacker aimed low and fast, toward Emma's stomach, a strong body shoved between them. Lucas slammed into the attacker with enough force to knock him sideways. Emma smelled wool and cedar when Lucas moved close. He shoved the masked figure to the ground, then turned slowly, hands spread. "Stay back." Lucas to Emma, then to the attacker. "Who sent you?" The attacker scrambled, weakly apologetic. Sheriff Morale's truck lights suddenly lit the far side of the bridge. A second officer shouted commands. The scene shifted fast, a struggle, a shout, a cuffing of hands. The attacker kept his mouth closed. After the rush and the sirens, Emma sat on the bridge curb and held her hands together to stop them from shaking. Her breath was shallow and quick. Lucas stood a few feet away, coat hanging from one arm, eyes avoiding hers. He looked older in that light, the lines by his mouth deeper. He did not speak at first. Nora crouched beside Emma and said, "You okay?" Emma answered with a single sentence, "I am shaken," Nora, that was honest and small and true. Emma's fear bent toward a new emotion, confusion. She could not reconcile the Lucas who had pushed the masked figure away with the Lucas who had left her years ago. Sheriff Morales detained the attacker and asked questions. "Did you go to her apartment?" he asked. The man spat and said, "Got orders." His eyes flicked to Lucas for a hair's breadth longer than seemed natural. Emma watched Lucas. He folded his hands and paused. I came because I thought she was in danger." His voice was steady, measured. Emma's reaction to the line was not immediate trust. Doubt crept in again. "Lucas, did you send him?" Lucas looked at her directly for the first time. "No. He said he didn't know anyone would follow me. I came after I saw someone leave the cafe." He blinked, then added, "I didn't put anyone in your apartment." "Nora, then who did?" Nora pressed the sheriff for details about the attacker. "Is he local?" she asked. Sheriff Morales shook his head. "No records here. Name's patchy. Could be a drifter, could be hired." He handed the attacker over to the county, and the man muttered that he had been paid. Payment changed the scene from random violence to deliberate pressure. Emma's suspicion angled toward motive. Someone wanted to scare her. Someone wanted to send a message. Lucas stayed close as they walked back to the cafe after the sheriff left. He walked one pace behind Emma, his posture careful. I didn't leave you to be hurt." Emma's hands were cold. "You left me without answers, Lucas," she said. Her voice did not rise, but the words hit with a contained force. "You left me when I needed you." Lucas swallowed and said simply. I know that single word carried years of implication. It did not forgive anything. It did not explain anything. It did make him present. Inside the cafe, sunlight cut across the wooden floor. The room felt ordinary and small and therefore safer. Nora set a coffee down in front of Emma with a hand that did not tremble. "Talk." Nora, tell us everything you remember about him leaving. Tell Sheriff Morales anything you think matters. Emma did. She about the ring box under the pastries and the photograph under the croissants from the earlier morning. She how the velvet box had looked new and deliberate. She kept her sentences sure there wasn't married to the idea of leaving a mystery. He wanted me to see it, she said, meaning the unknown sender. Nora, who would put a ring there and expect you to find it? Emma checked the countertop with a finger, then wiped the smear of dust where the box had rested. Lucas listened without interrupting, hands folded. When Emma paused, he asked, "Do you want me to go through the footage again?" His offer sounded practical. Emma hesitated. Her emotions shifted again from confusion to guarded curiosity. She could use the help, but she also felt the old wound of being abandoned. She answered yes. Go over it. With Morales, Lucas nodded and left to get the sheriff, while Nora stayed to arrange the café for the morning rush. Emma stood behind the counter and stacked croissants slowly. The rhythmic motion of arranging pastries calmed her breathing. Sheriff Morales replayed the footage. This time they paused and zoomed. The second figure's profile became clearer for a moment, a shoulder, a hood. The camera had caught a flash of a glove that left a smear on the door in Emma's apartment to have a print now, from where the attacker grabbed the railing, more rails. He held a sealed evidence bag with a small sweat-stained glove. Emma held her breath as he set it on the counter. The glove's fabric smelled of river mud and cheap leather. Nora glanced at Lucas, and he closed his eyes for a second, jaw tight. The camera footage had shifted their understanding. Someone had been following Lucas that night, or someone had used his presence to make a pathway. Emma, why would someone use Lucas to get to me? Morales, either to hide behind his visit, or to bait you into going somewhere. He folded his hands. Need to find who paid him. The practical phrasing made the problem smaller and larger at once. Emma felt the pressure of the unknown like a weight pressing at the base of her throat. She put both hands on the counter and supported herself. A new text arrived on Emma's phone. I saw you with him. The sender's name was blocked. The message included a grainy photo of the café exterior, with Emma and Lucas framed through the doorway. Someone was watching still. For the third time that morning the world shifted under her feet. Emma's fear changed into anger. She shoved the counter with her palm and let herself feel the burn behind her eyes. Who is watching me? She asked aloud. Nora, someone who knows more than we thought. Emma stood up straight then and said, "We will not let them keep me scared." The sentence was action as much as vow. They decided to check the bus ticket route at the sheriff's suggestion. The manager called and confirmed a delivery van that matched the ticket's timing had made a stop near Cedar Hollow. Emma agreed to go look at the route with Sheriff Morales and Lucas. Nora stayed to open the café, but she promised to keep phones on and the door locked. As she left, Nora put a hand on Emma's shoulder and said, "Be careful, and call if anything feels off." The touch was brief and rooted. Emma folded a napkin with fingers that did not tremble and walked out with Lucas and the sheriff. On the road to Cedar Hollow, Emma watched Lucas drive. He kept his hands light on the wheel. He kept silent and focused. When the sheriff spoke to dispatch, Lucas answered a few times with the same measured baritone he had used on the bridge. Emma studied him in profile. He looked contained. He looked responsible. She caught herself cataloging the present in the language of proof. His clean cuff, the worn leather briefcase in the back seat, the small dimple when he smiled without trying to. Those were concrete things that did not erase the past. At the bus depot in Cedar Hollow, they found a man who worked security and remembered a pickup van, a driver who took a box to a warehouse. The man signed a log was nervous about his phone. The guard said kept looking over his shoulder. Emma listened. Did he say where the box came from? The guard shrugged, said it came from a business address in town. The sheriff called the address. While the call connected, Emma felt a small swell of cautious hope. The investigation moved outward. The tension built into a different pressure, the need to know whose money had bought someone's silence. Dispatch came back with an address, an empty storefront on Maple Street with the name of a defunct florist taped to the window. Inside the warehouse they found stacked crates, a folding table, and a shipping label with a corporate return address none of them recognized at first. The label had a small sticker with a logo Emma did not know. Lucas crouched to read the barcode. "You can trace this," he said, "unless someone wants to burn the trail." He sounded sharp. His voice suggested competence rather than charm. Emma felt an emotion shift again, this time toward cautious relief. The trail existed. It could be followed. On the drive back, Emma's phone rang. It was the masked caller's number, blocked again. No words, only breathing on the line for a second. Then a recorded message: "Stop digging. Leave it alone." The call cut. Emma stopped the car. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. Her anger flared, then cooled into a practical decision. She would not stop. She would call Sheriff Morales and share the evidence. She also kept thinking of the small velvet box and the photograph. Someone wanted her to remember that ring. Someone wanted her to feel small and hunted. Back at the café, sunlight had brightened the windows. Customers filed in. Nora moved through the room like an anchor, pouring coffee, leaning in to tell a joke to a regular, bringing normalcy as cover. Emma stood behind the counter and wiped a smear off the wood. Her hands paused over a small metal dish, the place where she would put a locket if found. She felt protective of that space. She felt protective of the cafe's rhythm. She had to keep its ordinary life moving. Sheriff Morales handed a small sealed evidence bag to Emma before he left. Inside was a fingerprint card taken from the glove they had found at the bridge and a notation of the attacker's statement. "Well, run this overnight. Morales, if it links to a record, well, know where it came from." Emma nodded. She placed the evidence bag under the counter in a locked drawer, then ran her thumb along the edge and felt the tiny ridge of the wood. Her chest was a complicated tightness now, relief that action had been taken, unease that the threat remained, and a guarded curiosity about Lucas. She did not know where to put that last one. That afternoon, a surprise arrived. A courier carrying a small, wrapped box left it at the door with no signature required. Emma opened it with quick, precise fingers. Inside was a single photograph of her and Lucas on a summer night years ago, leaning against a diner car. Someone had trimmed the edge and placed a corner fold along the photo. On the back, in neat handwriting, a single line: "Remember what you left." The message cut into Emma like a blade. It turned confusion into a sharp, private hurt. Nora came around the counter and said, "Who would send that?" Emma answered, "Someone who wants to remind me of the past." Her voice was low. "Someone who wants me to feel guilty." Nora's face hardened. That evening, Lucas stayed behind after the café closed. He helped stack chairs without speaking. When the lights were low and the room smelled of lemon oil and coffee, he said, "I want to tell you everything I can, Emma. I can't change what I did, but I can show you what I know now." Emma paused for a long moment. She had rehearsed questions during the day, short ones that cut to the truth. Why did you leave? Lucas did not try to soften the past. He answered with 3 short sentences. "Me job forced a choice. I chose a promise I thought was right then. I was wrong." The words were plain. Emma's jaw clenched. Her emotional response moved from anger to a brittle calm. She had expected excuses. He gave a concise admission. The next morning, as the sun rose over the river, Emma unlocked the café and found her silver locket on the counter with a single fresh fingerprint pressed into the metal. The print was clear, dark against the silver. Emma picked up the locket and felt the weight of it like a question. Nora came in behind her and saw it. "Nora," they moved it. "Someone's watching closely." Emma did not speak at first. She closed the locket and slid it into her pocket, fingers resting on the dent where the fingerprint had settled like a signature. She felt the day's events gather into a single knot: intrusion, a masked attack, the bus ticket, the courier with the photograph, Lucas' presence, the sheriff's evidence. The knot did not untie, it tightened. Emma looked up at Nora and said one line, small and deliberate. "We find who left that print." Nora's laugh was Shorty's. "We do." Emma left the counter to lock the front doors and step outside into the street. The morning smelled of brewing coffee and rain. A delivery van rolled by. She closed the door as the bell chimed, and the sound cut the air. The last thing in the chapter is the silver locket in her pocket, and the single fresh fingerprint she could not yet read. A concrete trace that linked the morning's violence to whoever was still watching. A volunteer slammed a faded photograph onto the fundraiser display table, and the room turned toward Emma. Suspicion tightened in her chest the way a hand clamps a wrist. She saw Lucas' coat at the edge of the event hall and understood why the photograph had been brought out. Who brought this here? Someone demanded from the crowd. Emma heard the question, felt the pressure in the center of her face, and stepped back as a man near the front raised the image higher for everyone to see. The central problem was immediate and loud. The man she had been abandoned by years ago was standing in the town hall, and neighbors were now watching them both without knowing what had happened. She pushed a knot of napkins into her palm as the mayor began to speak. Emma held the napkins because she needed a small, repetitive movement to keep her hands steady. Her fingers folded and smoothed the paper while Nora moved forward like a shield. "Nora." "Emma Lowe." And Nora answered with a short shake of her head and a hand that found Emma's elbow. The two women had opened the café together for years. Nora's face was set the way it always was when she prepared to defend someone, jaw forward, arms ready. The opening mingled hurt and business. The fundraiser had been Emma's idea to raise money for the old library roof, and now it had to carry the weight of a private history. This is the past on display. Mayor Harold Finch, trying to steer the room back to civility, and then failing as a council member, called out a sharper claimer. "Hale, are you here to buy influence?" The accusation landed in the same beat as a dozen side glances. Lucas folded his hands, looked at the photograph, and then at Emma. He did not speak at once. He had never been fast with explanations when guilt sat across from him. Nora stepped up and spoke for Emma before Emma could find her voice. "Mayor, this fundraiser is for the library. We don't need ugly questions here. Let's keep this civil." Nora's voice cut through the murmurs. She did not say Lucas' name at first. When she did, it was short and practical. "Lucas Hale, explain yourself to the town if you can, but do it without dragging Emma into rumor." Lucas made a slow nod. He answered with measured words that tried to hold both apology and restraint. "Mayor Finch, I'm here because I offered to fund the roof repair. I didn't come to make a scene." His voice was even. Emma watched his hands. He paused before he spoke, and that pause had been a pattern since the first time he walked away years earlier. "Emma," he said when he finally looked at her. And saying her name sent a dozen reactions through her: anger, old hurt, and the fresh sting of suspicion. "Again way now." "Emma." Her voice cut short in the room's open air. She used short sentences because shorter words carried in the hallway. "Give money now, Lucas. Why show up here at all?" She kept her hands visible on the table. People took the sight of her hands as proof she was not hiding anything. Lucas held her ice. "He came to make amends," he said. The words landed thin. He did not give the proof she needed. Nora's shoulders tightened beside Emma. The crowd leaned forward with the kind of interest small towns reserve for the private affairs of people they feel they can judge. From the side entrance corridor, a woman, who had been volunteering, slipped through the crowd and reached Emma's arm. She folded a paper and pressed it into Emma's palm without speaking. Emma felt the paper's edge and pocketed it with a motion that kept her hands on the table. The folded note pulled her attention away from Lucas for a breath. She unfolded it slowly and read, "Be careful around him. Someone is buying silence." The sentence was typed and plain. It added a new pressure that made her throat raw. Fear arrived then, quick and precise, not an abstract dread, but a tangible alert that made Emma check the exits, the backs of chairs. the clustered faces for anything that didn't belong. The event that had been personal now smelled of negotiation, of money sliding under doors. Her first emotion, suspicion, had already rippled into anger and now to fear. She kept the fear small, folded in the way you fold a photograph, so it fits in a pocket. She put the note back between 2 pages of the event program and slid them into her apron pocket. The remainder of the fundraiser blurred into a sequence of small combats. Council member Duncan Shaw spoke loudly that Lucas had returned to buy favor, and the mayor tried to quiet him. Duncan, "That's enough," Mayor Finch snapped. But Duncan only shrugged and held up the photograph like evidence. People have a right to know what strings are attached. Nora confronted Duncan directly when the crowd's questions began to aim less at policy and more at Emma's private life. Duncan, have you seen the books, Duncan? Norado, you have proof, or do you just want to make a spectacle? Her brows drew together, and she used short, clipped lines. Emma heard Nora's voice change harder, clipped, and she felt steadier because Nora's anger was a tool, not a roar. Across the room, Lucas tried to say he could explain without naming the outside pressure. He used phrases that dodged specifics. "There are complications," he said, and then he stopped. Emma felt the old hole open, the one left when he had walked away years earlier. That hole had names and dates and a velvet ring box that had been left behind under pastry displays, and a photograph that had once been tucked into his wallet. Emma's memory delivered those concrete moments. The ring box under the glass case, the night the deadbolt had hung open when she came home. Those specific images rose because they mattered here. They were not soft metaphors, just facts that proved history. After another round of questions, Emma excused herself from the main floor and moved toward the back corridors. Nora, give them 5 minutes. He'll be back. The stairwell smelled faintly of cleaning solution. Someone clapped nearby. A volunteer's laughter carried like a distant echo of things that belonged elsewhere. In the corridor, a door to a storage area stood half open. Emma pushed through. She found Lucas there, pulling a crate of folding chairs toward the back room. He straightened when he saw her, and for a moment neither spoke. The corridor narrowed their movements and forced a series of small actions. Lucas set the crate down, Emma folded her arms, and the two stood in the rectangle of raw light from a single high bulb. The exchange that followed was close-quartered and urgent. "You brought money for the roof. A mayor bought your way into the room. Why bring our past here?" She kept her sentences short. She used his name. "Lucas, you walked out. People deserve answers, not a check." She felt anger build into something concrete, a pressing demand for facts. Lucas swallowed. "Emma, I came back because I couldn't leave it like that. I know how it looks. I know I left. But someone is pressuring me too." He spoke quietly. "There are men who want the town to accept certain projects, and they threaten to make me complicit." He paused and folded his hands together the way he always had when he measured his next phrase. Emma's eyes narrowed. "Who threatened you?" she asked. Her voice betrayed a sharpened disbelief. "What does that even mean, Lucas?" "I can't say the name here," Lucas answered. Then he added, "But it's real. They expected results from me. When I refused to deliver what they demanded, they sent a message." He reached into his coat and produced a thin envelope. "They me to stay quiet. They me to make sure the town would accept a developer's plan. They wanted me to smooth things over." His fingers trembled just enough that Emma noticed. The corridor swallowed the sound of their breathing. They argued in short chops. Emma's sentences like small stones, Lucas' replies like shorn cloth. The pattern of fast back and forth came to life. "You left me. Emeo owed me answers. You owed me honesty, Emma. I tried to explain then. Lucas, I tried to write and call. You didn't." She shot back. "You didn't come back until it mattered to your business." "That isn't true, Lucas. It matters to me in ways that don't look good in town gossip. I didn't come to buy anyone. I came to say I'm sorry and to fix things in a way that helps everyone." His voice tightened. "But now they're saying I must deliver the calf, the property. They want control." Emma folded her hands on the crate. She felt anger shift into cold calculation. If you were threatened, why is there a transfer slip with your company's name on it in Nora's hands? The name of the document had not yet been revealed to the public. Emma had been careful. She had asked Nora to check receipts after a mishap with the event payment. The mention of the transfer made Lucas flinch. When Emma walked back into the main hall, Nora intercepted her near the supply closet. Nora held a small stack of papers with a bank transfer slip on top. Her face was set with that practical skepticism Emma relied on. Duncan tried to dismiss this. Nora, speaking quickly so no one listened in, there's a transfer from Hale Holdings to a local fixer, time-stamped last month. It doesn't look like a donation. It looks like payment for something else. She the words plainly and slid the papers into Emma's hand. Emma read the slip and felt the room tilt again, not with metaphor, but with people leaning in to see. The inscription showed a company's name, an amount, and a beneficiary. The numbers told a story, money moving where it did not belong. Nora's discovery changed the frame of the day. Emma heard neighbors gasp. Duncan tried to laugh it off, and Mayor Finch's smile thinned. Nora did not let Duncan off. Mayor Finch, this matters. People brought money to this town for library repairs. If lines of influence are being bought, we need clarity now. Her voice was loud enough to reach the front row. People started murmuring again, but this time the murmurs had teeth. Emma's suspicion hardened into determination. She had been angry before and afraid after the note, but now she wanted facts and she wanted action. Lucas in the hall, I won't be part of a cover-up. If your company paid a fixer, you need to explain who that fixer is, to me and to the town. The words came out sharp. Her hands moved in small, precise gestures. Lucas looked back at Hirik and tried to explain. Emma, I will show you the paper trail. I will show you the emails he promised without theatrics. His voice was tight with the effort to be credible, but they are watching me. I can't show everything in public. They will. He stopped, cut off by the arrival of another event. When Emma returned to the café that evening before it closed, she found the velvet ring box moved to the main counter. The box had been a private symbol left behind in earlier chapters, and its sitting there was a domestic provocation. Inside, someone had left a terse, handwritten note: do not trust public apologies. The handwriting was spiky and anonymous. The note's presence slapped a new layer of threat across the day. A bell jangled at the café door as she set the box down hard on the counter. She called Nora. Nora, someone moved the box. Emma. Her voice had tightened into a command. Keep watch. Lock the back door if anyone's suspicious. Shows. Nora arrived in 5 minutes and scanned the small room with the trained gaze of someone who had kept a shop safe through winters and rowdy college nights. Call Mrs. Klein across the street to keep an eye. Nora and I'll take the extra classroom key from under the plant pot. She moved with choreographed speed, converting fear into tasks. When she found a transfer slip or a note, she treated both as evidence and acted. That night, the alley behind the café became the scene of the chapter's climax. Victor Reed arrived in a sharp suit and an impatience that showed in the click of his shoes on wet concrete. He leaned on the dumpster and watched Lucas come out to smoke. When Lucas reached the alley, Victor threw a shadow of a hand and called his name. The first blow was words: you didn't deliver. You promised me the old storefront. You promised me your influence. His voice had a smooth menace. Emma stepped out when she heard the voices. She had not intended to confront anyone in the alley, but the velvet box and the note had already pushed her into action. Victor turned and his look landed on her. He smiled as if he had been waiting. So she's the one keeping it, he said. The girl who runs the little café. You owe me the building, Lucas, or you owe me proof of cooperation. The threat was clear: take the café or silence. Victor's palm struck the side of the dumpster in emphasis. Fear returned, sudden and sharp, this time as a physical sensation. Emma's legs went cold, her mouth dry. Nora came from the back alley gate with a neighbor at her heels, breath visible in the night air. The neighbor, a man named Carl who owned the hardware store, had seen Victor's car idling earlier and followed a suspicion into the dark. He pushed between Victor and Lucas without hesitation. "You picked the wrong block, friend Carl." Victor laughed and moved one step closer to Emma, which made her step back. He spoke to Lucas with a quieter cruelty. "You have until next Friday to deliver the property. If you hand it over, no one gets hurt. If you don't, I'll make sure your name means nothing here. It is business." The intent was physical threat wrapped in legal language. Nora did not wait. She shouted, "Get out of here, Victor. Get out now." Her voice was an instrument of urgency. Carl pushed a hand against Victor's chest. There was a scuffle as Victor tried to regain control. In 2 breaths, the neighbor's presence and Nora's refusal made Victor realize he was exposed. He spat a last warning, "This isn't over," and walked back to his car. The engine put a low, angry growl between them, and then the car drove off. Emma stayed rooted to the alley's cold concrete and the echo of the car's taillights. Her chest hitched with a series of small reactions. Her jaw clenched, her fingers curled around the strap of her apron, her eyes fixed on the place where Victor had stood. The immediate threat had been driven off, but the chapter's highest stakes had been made visible. Men with money and threats wanted the calf. The danger was no longer rumor. Nora inspected the alley for signs left behind: tire marks, a scrap of paper, anything that might identify Victor or his fixer. She found a business card half torn under a curb and handed it to him. "Victor Reed, real estate. But his card is a front. He deals in pressure, Nora." Emma pocketed the card and felt the last shift of emotion in the sequence, fear folding into a hard resolution. She would not be quietly bought off. Back inside the caf, they assessed the immediate damage. A window had a shallow crack near the sill where a thrown rock had struck earlier that week. A tray of receipts had been disturbed. The velvet ring box sat open on the counter like a question. Nora put the bank transfer slip and the torn business card together. "Make copies," she said. "Bring this to the town board tomorrow. We tell them what we found and ask for protective order if we have to." Emma listened and felt a new set of muscles draw tight under her ribs. Resolve. Not the sloganized kind, but a practical plan. She began listing actions aloud. "I will call the bank. I will ask Mayor Finch for a special meeting. Lucas, you have to show us the emails and the transfer paperwork." Her words were short, instructions that moved things forward rather than opinions. Lucas moved closer and put his hands on the counter. "Palms down, I'll show you everything," he said. "I'll turn over my laptop to a lawyer. I'll sign whatever releases you need." He looked at Emma. "Brought you back a promise, Emma. I know it doesn't undo the past, but I will not let them take what you built." His voice trembled, the last words in a way that made Emma's anger reframe into a demand for verification. Nora answered with her usual bluntness. "Promises don't fix files, Lucas. Show us the files." Her face was unyielding. Carl stood near the door, arms crossed, watching the exchange. He had been part of the alley's defense and now acted like a citizen who had seen injustice and could not ignore it. They arranged a plan for the next day: copies of documents, a meeting at the town hall before the morning session, a call to the bank fraud department, and an appointment for Lucas to bring evidence to Mayor Finch. The night's events had resolved the chapter's immediate danger. Victor had been driven off, but had also raised new stakes. Emma's choice was clear: she would not be bought or threatened, but she would also not accept Lucas' words without proof. As the caf closed and the lights dimmed to a warm glow, Emma moved around the counter and picked up the velvet ring box. She held it for a long breath, and then slid it into the drawer with the transfer slip and the volunteer's folded warning. She locked the drawer and turned the key twice. The lock clicked firmly. At the back door, Nora collected the last chairs. Emma checked the back alley one more time through the safety of the glass. The street outside was quiet. A single street lamp painted a pool of amber. She felt the day's emotional shifts settle into a practical pattern she could act on. Suspicion had driven her to demand answers. Fear had forced protective choices. Anger had sharpened into a refusal to be silenced. The evidence Nora had found had altered the way everyone saw Luca's return. Emma's final decision for the night was concrete and small. She would not accept apologies without proof. She would not sell out the calf. She would not be moved by speeches when papers told a different story. Lucas, bring the files to Mayor Finch at 9. Nora will be there. I will be there. If your company paid a fixer, we will expose it. If you were threatened, tell us who and show us the proof. Her voice left no room for theatrics. Outside, as Emma turned the key in the café's back door and the lock fell into place, a soft, deliberate knock landed on the wooden frame. The sound was immediate and external, the kind of concrete beat the chapter needed to end on. Emma paused with her hand on the knob, listening to the knock repeat twice. She bent forward and called, "Who is there?" The chapter closed on that single, precise action, a knock at the door that demanded answers in the next scene. Emma lifted the brass plaque with both hands and felt the microphone tremble under her fingers when someone from the crowd said, "Emma." She looked up and saw Lucas Hale at the edge of the riverfront lights. Suspicion tightened in Emma's chest the way a finger tightens on a ribbon. She had not expected him to return in public. The plaque wobbled in her hands, and she kept her voice level as she finished the sentence she had practiced. The problem was plain. The man who had left her years ago had come back in a way that forced the town to see it. And everyone at the dedication would want to know why. She set the plaque on the lectern with a flat motion that kept her hands from shaking. Nora stepped forward without waiting. "Step down, Nora," and the word carried a protective edge Emma had learned to rely on. Nora moved in front of the small group of volunteers and put herself between Emma and the crowd. Emma felt the shift from suspicion to guarded anger as the murmurs around them turned audible. A volunteer pressed a faded photograph into view. Someone had already made the past visible. Who brought that? A woman called from the front row. Mayor Ruiz, the local reporter, held her phone high. Her question landed on Emma like cold rain. Emma straightened. She had seen that photograph before. It had been slid under a pastry display months earlier and left with a small velvet ring box. The memory of Chapter 2 came back in precise detail. Emma had crouched beside the croissants and found the box with its scuffed hinge. The photograph had shown a younger Emma and Lucas by the old bridge, laughing. That earlier discovery had been quiet guile. This time someone had chosen the stage. Lucas cleared his throat so the sound carried. "Emma," he said. His voice had the same careful baritone she remembered. Nora's body went rigid behind the lectern. "People craned to see him. He came because I owe you an explanation," Lucas called, not a demand but a statement that shifted the crowd's focus. Mayor leaned forward. "Hale, why did you leave Emma? Did you come back for photo ops?" Her tone cut like a blade. Lucas paused, and the pause felt public and vulnerable at once. He held his hands out as if to disarm the room. "He made choices that I regret. He said I am not here for a photo op. I am here to tell the truth." The crowd reacted with a mix of scoffs and stillness. Emma smelled the river and hot cocoa from a nearby vendor. Smell anchored her while her mind catalogued the immediate facts. Nora stepped to Emma's side and touched her forearm. "Let him speak there," Nora whispered, but the whisper carried. Nora read the crowd quickly and moved to frame Emma as someone to be defended rather than examined. Emma's suspicion shifted into a cautious curiosity. She let it because she needed facts, not rumors. Lucas moved toward the front, but a volunteer held the faded photo up again. "You disappeared, Lucas. You left town." "Why now?" a man shouted. The question forced Lucas into specific detail. "He left because I thought it was the only way to finish what I had started," he said. He spoke of work, of a contract that had demanded his presence overseas. The late nights in offices that smelled of paper and machine oily wanted to be able to build something that mattered. "I took a wrong road to get there," he added. The sentence was short. It did not dissolve the accusation. Emma felt heat rise against her palms. "You took my ring box and a photograph into people's hands, she said, stepping forward so the microphone caught her. Her voice was steady. You left. You never wrote. You never said I'm sorry properly. She spelled out the hurt with small, concrete evidence. People listened because she listed things they could measure: absence, silence, the box under the pastry display. Lucas looked at her as if cataloguing the scars he had left. A reporter shouted, "Did you ever try to contact her, Lucas?" The question pushed him into another small confession. He wrote a letter I never mailed. Lucas, he sent a wire that bounced. I had a job that closed lines. None of that excuses me. Emma, his shoulders tightened. He let ambition be an excuse. I let people tell me there was a better path if I left. But the choice was mine. His voice dipped into something that sounded like regret. The town shifted. Some faces softened while others closed. Emma felt the shape of anger move into doubt. She could see a man who had grown cleaner around the edges. But the facts of his absence were still plain. When the official applause waned, someone in the crowd tapped Emma's shoulder and pointed. "Theirs is something under the bench plate," the voice said. Nora pushed past politely and crouched. She reached under the bench and pulled out a folded note. The paper was small and anonymous. The handwriting was blocky. Nora read the words aloud. "Leave her alone, or your mistakes will be dragged into the river." The note made the whole dedication breathe differently. Suspicion shifted into fear in a single motion for both women. Who wrote that? Nora demanded, voice low. A few hands rose to deny knowledge. Lucas glanced at the note and his face lost color. "That's a threat," he said. "Emma, you shouldn't be here if someone wants to make you a target." His sentence was a direct offer of protection disguised as a warning. Emma met his eyes and found them not entirely free of sincerity. The crowd thinned as people stepped back from the sudden tension. Maya flashed her phone camera like a shutter. Caleb Morey, a man volunteers knew only by his work with local clean-up crews, lingered by the vendor, tense with his hands jammed in his coat pockets. He avoided eye contact. Nora noticed him. Caleb, Nora to Emma. Soto Vos's been looking at Lucas all night. The observation added a new angle. Someone with a job near the water and a grudge could make threats feel tangible. Lucas crouched to speak to Emma without the crowd hearing. "He didn't come to hurt you with false promises," he said. His voice was low. "He came to stand where I ought to have stood years ago and to answer for it. If there's danger, well, face it together if you want that." There was a pause when Emma considered the offer. She felt anger and then a quick turn toward pragmatic caution. The town's safety mattered to her more than Lucas' contrition. Emma finally not together like before. Not without proof. The word proof registered like a small victory. She wanted to protect her life and keep her calf intact. Her decisions had to be measured. Nora's jaw loosened with relief. Lucas nodded and did not try to cross the boundary. Later, behind the stage in the vendor's alley, Emma demanded specifics. "Why did you leave?" she asked as vendors dismantled folding tables under string lights. The alley smelled of fried dough and diesel. Lucas braced against a crate and said, "I was younger than my choices. I thought success would fix things I had broken. I thought if I could build something big enough, the guilt would stop." He spoke in short sentences. "Destroyed the chance to be here with you." I know that his manner matched the man she remembered, precise and contained, yet his tone cracked when he admitted the cost. "You don't get to make that decision for me." Emma replied, "You left me to manage questions I didn't ask for." She listed events she had handled alone. The nights she kept the cafe open with fewer hands. The afternoons she pretended not to look at the empty place at her side. The nights she slept with the small silver locket against her skin. She spoke in details because details had weight. Accusation without evidence dissolves into rumor. Lucas listened and folded his hands as if preparing to be examined. Emma held his gaze. "We show up now?" she asked. "We risk town gossip at a dedication." Lucas inhaled because someone wanted the photograph to be seen, not because I asked for a stage. "I found out about the photograph this week. The same way you did. Someone made sure it would surface in public." I wanted to be here. The moment it did, he pointed at the volunteers. He thought being present would stop whatever they planned next. I misjudged how unstable that plan was. His explanation opened a small door in Emma's mind. The photograph's reappearance might have been engineered. Nora arrived and helped up the anonymous note. Someone left this under the plaque. She said plainly, it says, "Hell drag things into the river." That isn't coincidence. The three of them formed a tight line in the dim alley. Emotion shifted again in Emma from suspicion to guarded calculation. She felt her old instinct to protect the calf kick in. If someone wanted to scare her into silence, the threat had to be removed. Well, check the cameras by the vendor tents. Nora will ask Caleb what he was doing. Well, call the police if it's necessary. Her voice had the brisk authority of someone used to handling small-town crises. Emma appreciated the plan. It moved them from conversation into action. They found a vendor who had recorded a shaky clip on an old phone. In the footage, a man with a hood lingered near the bench an hour before the ceremony. He bent and placed a folded item beneath the plaque. The image was grainy, but the jacket bore a distinctive mud streak on the sleeve. Emma watched the clip twice. The grain and the mud strip turned suspicion into identification for Nora. She pointed at Caleb's sleeves in the crowd footage and matched the stain. That's him, Nora. Caleb tried to walk away. When they approached, Caleb stopped Nora, stepping in his path. What did you put under the plaque? He shifted his weight, eyes darting to Lucas, and then to Emma. Didn't mean he began. You didn't mean to put that photograph up there. Emma, voice steady. Tell me. Caleb's jaw tightened. He stepped into the alley away from the lights. You don't understand. He ruined us. Caleb in a rush. Lucas' company closed the factory. My brother lost a machinist job. I didn't want to drag her into it, just scare him, make him feel it. The confession came out broken, full of names and dates. Nora's expression hardened. Eddie thought threatening her would get him to you. She spat. You endangered Emma because of a job. Caleb's shoulders collapsed. He wanted him to feel ashamed. I didn't realize they'd put the photo on stage. His voice droppy. Didn't mean for her to be humiliated. The statement twisted the earlier assumptions. Emma listened and felt a new shift, anger at Caleb's methods, and then clarity about motive. The twist reframed the photograph's appearance. It was not random cruelty directed at her alone. It was a misdirected retaliation for business fallout. That did not excuse the sabotage, but it did change who the enemy was. She had thought Lucas' return might be self-serving. She realized part of the spectacle had been forced by someone with a personal grievance. At that moment, Caleb lunged, not with a weapon but with a shove meant to disorient. Don't involve me, he hissed at Lucas. The alley erupted with motion. Lucas stepped between Caleb and Emma. Caleb, stop. Lucas can talk. Put your hands down. Lucas' voice was firm. He reached out and then froze when Caleb drew a small pocket knife and flicked it open. The blade flashed under the alley lights. Nora moved forward and grabbed Caleb's wrist. Drop it now, she said, and the grip was direct and forceful. Emma felt her breath catch. Fear spread through her hands, making them clench the small silver locket in her palm. She had to take control of the situation. Caleb, put it away, she said, naming him and the action in a way that slowed him. Her voice steadied him more than anger had. He hesitated, the knife dulling in his grasp. Lucas stepped closer and drew his phone, calling the local patrol. The external event, a weapon revealed, forced a rapid escalation. Caleb's shoulders sagged. He dropped the knife into Nora's outstretched hand, as if he had no use for it. No, he didn't want to hurt her. He muttered he just wanted him to know. Nora handed the knife to Lucas, who kept his palms open to show he would not use force. You have to come with us. Caleb, Nora put her in danger. Explain to the officers why you did this. The practical sentence moved the scene from accusation to procedure. Back on the riverfront stage, the crowd had fractured into gossip and concern. Mayor Ruiz had a new headline in mind: volunteer sabotage at dedication. The police arrived and took statements. Lucas addressed the crowd in short, direct sentences. Will cooperate. I have failed Emma by not being present when she needed me. I did not orchestrate this. I will face the consequences of my past mistakes. Publicly and responsibly, he named specific things he would do. Fund a small memorial for the lost jobs, meet with former workers, and support local hiring drives. His promises were concrete actions rather than vague apologies. Emma watched him. Her anger moved into a slow, practical assessment. He had offered restitution that night, money and labor to support those hurt by his company's decisions. That offer did not erase personal betrayal, but it altered the town's reaction. People began to talk in clusters about how to accept help and how to demand accountability. Nora stayed by Emma's side and whispered, "Decide for the café." Not for him. The advice reminded Emma that her first obligation was to protect her life and community. Lucas found Emma after the police left and handed over his contact details to the volunteer coordinator. He knelt and looked directly at her. "He will not ask you now. He said he will work to make this right in town. If you ever want answers, I will give them. If you want me to stay out of your life, say so, and I will leave. I'm asking you to decide what you need from me." Emma, his sentence, was an open offer that placed the choice with her. Emotion shifted once more, from uncertainty to a measured resolve inside Emma. The next morning, the cafe smelled of coffee and the toast of regulars. Emma sat at the windowsill with a cup and the small velvet box beside her. The morning light fell in a way that revealed the tiny scuffs on the box hinge. She opened it and found it empty. The ring had never been there. The absence had become a concrete fact months ago. The box emptiness forced a decision. Nora wiped down the counter across from her and set a plate next to Emma. "Tell me, Nora, what do you want to do?" Emma spoke plainly. "Want the town to be safe. I want people to work. I want to keep the cafe without being dragged into spectacle." Her priorities were concrete. Nora nodded. Lucas arrived at 9 with papers and a printed plan. He to speak with the volunteer committee. He offered funds earmarked for job retraining and a transparent hiring program at a local workshop. He placed the documents on the counter. "This is not charity." He said, "This is accountability. I will meet with anyone who lost work because of my choices." His language was precise and businesslike. Emma read the plan and noticed clauses that protected the town's autonomy and required oversight. She recognized the same controlled attention to detail that had once made him leave. "We do this now. Nora, blunt, why should we trust you?" Lucas looked at Nora and then at Emma. "Because I can, and because it's the right thing to do." He said, "Because leaving taught me that consequences don't vanish if you ignore them. Because I owe these people that much. I know it won't erase what I did to Emma. I can't promise anything more than actions from now on." He it with short, careful sentences. The language matched his intent. Emma closed the velvet box and set it on the counter. "You'll fund training and meetings," she said. "But you also need to speak to the families you hurt face to face. Not through memos." Her demand was practical and public-minded. Lucas agreed. He named a time he would meet with families, and he asked Nora to join to ensure transparency. Nora accepted and set a time. The small set of actions turned abstract apology into a chain of public steps. Over the next week, Lucas attended a town meeting and listened. He took questions from the machinists who had lost jobs, from the volunteers who had been embarrassed by the photograph, and from the mayor who wanted a clear timeline. He did not give long speeches. He offered specific commitments, a fund managed by a committee that included Nora, a timeline for audits, and a pledge to open a small community workshops program that prioritized local hires. He also agreed to public accountability, allowing the town to set metrics and evaluate his promises. Each time he spoke, Emma watched what he did more than what he said. Caleb pleaded guilty to placing the photograph and to threatening behavior. He apologized to Emma in court and to Lucas in a short, shaky statement. He described the factory closing and his brother's anger at seeing Lucas prosper. His confession was blunt and full of names. The twist that had changed how the town viewed the photograph closed into a legal consequence. The court assigned community service and ordered Caleb to write letters of apology and to attend mediation sessions. The formal process turned a raw grievance into structured restitution. The town's reaction split into practical planning and private conversations in the café. Some people wanted louder condemnation of Lucas. Others wanted the job programs now. Emma listened to both sides while cleaning cups. She moved her hands in the measured motions she used when thinking. The action calmed her. Her internal shifts became visible. She felt still guarded, then strangely clear. She found that asking for specific things felt stronger than making pronouncements. She requested that Lucas not appear unannounced at the café, and that any outreach be coordinated through the volunteer committee. He agreed. Weeks later, at a small ceremony for the workers that took place at the town hall, Lucas stood and handed over the first fund check. He did it quietly and with short sentences. "This is a start," he told the assembled room. "He can't fix what I took from you, but I will keep my commitments." Visible people applauded, some louder than others. Emma watched from the back. When the ceremony broke, several former workers approached her and thanked her for insisting on oversight. Their thanks felt practical, not sentimental. In the café the following dawn, Emma took the small velvet box from the drawer and set it on the counter. Her hand closed around the small silver locket at her throat. She looked at Lucas when he pushed open the door and stood there in his dark coat. But he did not cross the threshold uninvited. He paused, as if to measure the boundary she had drawn. "Emma," he said softly, "will keep to the town's rules. I will keep my promises. I'm not asking for everything back. I'm asking to be accountable." He reached into his coat and placed a folded note on the counter. It was a list of scheduled public meetings, signed with his name and a phone number. "If you ever want me to step aside completely, tell me now. If you want me to be a responsible neighbor, tell me that too." His voice was brief. Emma folded the note and slid it into the velvet box. She did not say yes to romance. She did not say no to restitution. She named specific. "She will meet with the families and attend the committee sessions," she said. "Each demand a short sentence. You will not come to the café without notice. You will keep your contact transparent." Lucas nodded and repeated each line as if committing the words to memory. Nora, who had been watching from the counter, clapped once and then immediately resumed polishing a glass. Her small gesture was approval enough. The slow resolution did not erase the past. The small ring box remained empty, but decisions had been made and acted upon. Emma left the velvet box on the shelf behind the counter and locked it in the drawer. She placed the key in her apron pocket beneath the worn leather, where no one would find it by accident. The action sealed her choice to protect what she had built and to require action from those who sought to repair what they had broken. Outside, Lucas walked down the block toward the volunteer center to meet the committee. He kept his hands empty. He had been given a list of tasks, and the town had given him conditions. The balance had shifted. Power now required work and public accounting. Emma stayed behind the glass of the café and watched him go. She felt a small shift in her chest, neither closure nor reopening, but a steadfastness built from measures and boundaries rather than promises. As she turned back to the counter, a townsman from the dedication pushed open the door and left a single folded photograph on the table, a candid of Emma handing the plaque to a child at the dedication. Laughing, the image showed her hair caught in motion, her cardigan rumpled in the precise way Nora favored. She picked it up, smoothed the corner, and placed it in the drawer with the velvet box. The gesture tied the town's present to her decision. She would keep the parts of the past that belonged to the community and lock away what had been used against her. Emma slid the velvet box to the back of the drawer and turned the small key with a firm motion. The click sounded final in the quiet of the café. She left the drawer locked, her choices set by action, not by speech, Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past the window and a child laughed on the sidewalk. The town moved forward with new plans and a set of rules that required those who had hurt others to prove their change with work. Emma wiped her hands on a towel and opened the café to the morning rush. The decision she had made that night remained a concrete action, present in the locked drawer and the scheduled committee meetings, not a vow uttered and forgotten. When the bell over the door chimed for the first customer, Emma stepped behind the counter and put on her worn leather apron. She slid the key into her pocket and let the small silver locket rest against her chest. Outside, Lucas walked to the volunteer center and began the work he had promised. Inside, Emma started the cafe's day the way she always had, with measured motions, steady coffee, and a clear set of expectations. The final choice had been made and named by actions, and the riverfront dedication had given the town a visible plan to measure what came next.